For those who don't know that theme song, that is the NHL on ESPN theme song, and I don't care about copyright right now. I am so happy it's back. It was a great theme song. I didn't hear it when I was born, but Nathan, I showed it to you before this. Welcome to Not That It Matters. We're here. NHL's back on ESPN and already doing a horrible job in advertising the product, and what a terrible expansion draft show that was. They did absolutely nothing, and it took an hour and a half for them to see 6 jerseys, 3 dark, 3 white. Nate, the Olympics shouldn't be happening. We have a Kraken, we have DeAndre Hopkins threatening retirement, and we have a new NBA champion. But that's not even my top story. The Cleveland Indians are no longer the Indians. They are the Guardians. Nathan, give me everything you got. It's been a week. We've had a lot happen. How are you?
There's too many things going on in the sports world. Like, they need to slow it down a little bit here.
And don't get me wrong, we have more breaking news right now.
Oh, God, what just happened?
The Rangers have just traded Pavel Buchnevich to St. Louis for Sammy Blais and a second-round pick, which is a complete underpayment. But here comes Jack Eichel. Continue. That's it. That literally just happened. And I'm pissed because I liked Buchnevich. He's a great player, and now he is gone, which is super disappointing. He was a contract. He needed a restricted free agent. He needed a contract. They probably just couldn't pay him what he wanted. Sammy Blais is a good big body player, but we'll see.
The Cleveland Guardians. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, I have to say.
I would agree with you. However, I think if you see the Guardians logo, written out, I think it fits the same thing. It looks like the Indians. They wanted to keep the same theme. Obviously, the colors they're able to keep the same. I like that angel logo with the ball and the wings with the Guardians. There's a bridge. I forget what it is in Cleveland, but it has those quote unquote Guardians.
I gotta look it up so I can.
There it is. It's the Guardians of Traffic sit just outside the ballpark on Hope Memorial Bridge, and on their helmets is almost exactly like that picture where it's like a baseball with the 2 wings. It's the helmet from those 2 Guardians on that bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I like it, and obviously, that name needed to change, right? We saw a similar pattern with the now called Washington Football Team.
I'm very happy. I will say this: I'm very happy they're not the Cleveland Baseball Team.
The Cleveland Baseball Team.
That I think we were almost expecting that because of the football team.
Yeah, almost, right? But Cleveland Guardians again. I'm sure a lot of people right now just find it awkward.
It is awkward. It'll happen.
It'll get into it.
I do think we're still going to be here. We hear sometimes them referred to as the tribe. I know my friend Sean. He's an Indians fan and a Guardians fan after this.
He's a Guardians fan now. Yeah.
He said he'll still call them the tribe. So it'll be interesting. I just want to get out of the way because that was kind of unannounced. I woke up and
that one was kind of random. We didn't really get any anticipation for it, right?
Which I feel like is good. I feel like this is hard. Something like this is hard to hype up, don't you think?
Sure.
They just kind of announced it. We knew it was coming. We didn't know when or what or any ideas, which I kind of like. The football team were like, what do you want the team to be? There were votes, names, ideas thrown out, and it was okay. We're just gonna go with the football team. And this was
Washington Football Team.
I which honestly isn't the worst thing in the world. It rolls off the tongue pretty nice.
It sounds so strange.
It does, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think it really. I like it. I think it's going to be good. It's Cleveland, so we know they're going to be depressing. For Indians fans, the movie Major League will never be the same.
True.
Which I've seen many memes from MLB The Show about online. But we have more pressing matters. Nate, last Friday we talked about this being the most exciting NBA Finals since 2016.
Yeah.
And boy, did Game 6 not disappoint. Giannis went full, I'm not losing. He shot 19 total free throws. By the way, the Suns shot 19 total free throws as a team. The theme was, how the hell did Giannis learn to shoot this many free throws? There's always lack with the 10 seconds that the Giannis free throw rule. He went 17 of 19 from free throws, 50 points, 14 rebounds. Not to mention 5 blocks.
Yeah, that 5 block stat just kind of like is the cherry on top of the whipped cream, on top of the ice cream, on top of the cake for that kind of performance, right? 5 blocks? That's ridiculous.
I mean, you remember the block in game 3? It was the alley-oop on DeAndre Ayton late in the game, and he just blocked it. It was either he was going to get dunked on or post rise. That was a mean block, and I think that was a massive momentum turning point. And then obviously the alley-oop in game 4 to win it off the turnover. Game 5, he just goes beast mode again, and then this one, I mean, good for the city of Milwaukee. It's just unreal.
And like you said, blocks can be massive momentum changers, right?
Right. I mean, it's either a block or a dunk on you in most situations.
Think about LeBron blocking that layup against the Warriors back in 2016, right? Like he just one man ran all the way back and 1v3'd and stopped it, and then the whole momentum of the series shifted off it, right? But I mean, let's just talk about this guy's stats from this series. He averaged 40 minutes played, 35 points, 13 total rebounds, and 5 assists per game for this series. That's absurd.
Want to give him the Shaq stat?
Oh yeah, the Shaq stat. Let me find that. It was like it's like I gotta find something from like the Bureau of Useless Statistics or something, right? He's the second player ever in a finals series to have 3 games where he scored 40 points and had 10 rebounds.
Since Shaq
in 2000.
That's insane. Because you hear that, Nate, you asked me before the show, you said, oh, can you guess? I said Jordan. I don't know. Then I was like, okay, with the rebounds, maybe Kareem. No, Shaq. Since the year 2000, 21 years ago.
It's a long time.
He went beast mode. And remember, in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, Giannis had that horrific knee injury, which he ended up being okay. How, I don't know.
Yeah, he just told his knee, he's like, yeah, sorry, man. Like, I think you can, like, decide to hurt later, but not right now. Apologies.
I remember we were debating whether or not he was going to play Game 1.
Exactly.
And I said this throughout. Games 1 and 2 was a one-day break. Games 6 and 7 was a one-day break. But in between games 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5, and 5 and 6. 2 days off between every game. I don't mind 2 days off between travel days, but I seriously do think that helped Giannis feel better and better. And I think Chris Paul ran out of gas, and I feel bad for Chris Paul. The Suns played well. It's going to be interesting, though, because I know Booker, Paul, and I believe Chris Middleton. No, Booker, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton are all going to go play for Team USA at the Olympics, which we have our own opinions on coming up. But great series. Absolute great series.
Really good series. I think a lot of people will be a little upset that didn't go to Game 7, but
6 games. I mean, if you look at
it was a great series.
Suns won games 1 and 2. You're not in trouble till you lose a home game, and then the Bucks look like they were going to lose Game 3. They come back and win. They win
as soon
game
as
4.
the Suns lost Game 5, they were in a lot of trouble.
They smelt blood in the water, and Giannis went MVP mode. I mean, he is the best player in the league right now.
Well, he got series final MVP, right?
Oh yeah, he got series. He got finals MVP. I mean, if he didn't, there's something wrong. Like he was finals MVP. Like sometimes like, well, there's this guy who's been good for the playoffs, but he wasn't great in the finals. And there was that one guy in the finals who was the finals MVP. I talked about this show my first day when I was alone. I'm talking about what I think finals MVP means. This is what finals MVP means, because he was not only just the MVP of the playoffs, but it was the MVP of the finals, because without him, they do not win that series. They do not win that series. Giannis
again, right? He averaged 35 points a game in a final series. That's crazy.
Right, in the most intensity, and it's not like, there's no fans, like they're not in a bubble anymore. Like there are fans, there are people, and if you look at it, if we go to games 1 and 2, let's see what Game 1 and 2 was his first games off injuries, right? Game 1 was I believe July 6th. Yeah, he had 20 points, 17 rebounds, and we're like, okay, he's kind of hurt. And then in Phoenix again, next game, 42, and they still lost.
Jeez.
If we go to the next game in Phoenix, he had, I don't believe he was as good, but he had 32 points, 4 of 11 free throws. So he was playing like insanely good in Phoenix. And then game 6, he went 50 points, MVP mode.
I mean, it's hard to beat a team when you have a guy scoring 50 points in one game, right?
I mean, the Bucks did it though. Remember, Devin Booker had those 40 points. I mean, it wasn't 50, but it was 40 points, and he was going nuts, and they were supposed to win in Game 5. That was Game 5. and they
Mm-hmm.
just didn't win. So
Yeah.
I think turnovers was crucial here. We said it the whole time, and again, free throws and turnovers. Those have been the two things that you and I have talked about.
Yep.
They are just the two biggest things and the most important things
Oh,
in
in
basketball right now.
in almost all sports, turnovers is one of the most important stats.
Right. You look at
Right.
hockey, there's the
Because
neutral zone turnovers. They attack, you get an odd man rush. In basketball, you get a turnover, you get the odd man rush. You either get a dunk or an easy three. The only thing where there's a turnover comparable, I would say, to baseball would be like a wild pitch or a ball thrown away.
so baseball, you're looking at a better way to think about it would be maybe an unforced error in some sports, right?
Tennis is another one of those.
Tennis, baseball, anything that's sort of an unforced error that allows other teams to take advantage. I mean, some errors are forced, right? Like an interception in the NFL, right? Maybe it's a bad throw, but the defender still got to make a play on it. But yeah, turnovers are really, really such a key statistic, right? Any team can benefit from reducing turnovers, right? I mean, that's
in any sport. I mean, especially
Yeah.
in basketball and in hockey. I think those the turnovers are the two biggest ones. But I mean, any lasting thoughts? What do we see next season? Do you think the Bucks can repeat? How much turnover are they going to have in their roster? Right. Obviously, we know Giannis is going to be there and Chris Middleton and all these guys, but I feel like they need more help. I mean, they played 8 guys in game 6, and one of the guys, and Jeff Teague, played 2 minutes and literally didn't do a thing.
Sometimes the best rosters are ones that only play 8 players, right? Or only have like a really, really small core. And that's a strategy that some teams can use, but that strategy is very liable to if one problems.
You froze
Right.
there. Reliable
Oh, did I
to
freeze?
one what?
Okay, I said that you can have a small roster, right? If you only want to play 8 guys, right? Or if in soccer you only want to play 14 guys,
Right.
right? But you make yourself very vulnerable to one muscle pull, one twisted knee, right? One injury can like kick out the base of your entire strategy.
Especially if it's a team like the Bucks with Giannis. Like we said, there was no way. I mean, they got through Game 7 against the Hawks and they were able to win. Or it might have been Game 6. I apologize. Whichever game they won, they didn't have Giannis when they had to win. And then you and I both just said if they didn't have Giannis in the in this series, then they would not have won. So one injury away, and this team doesn't win. I don't believe so.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they can get some depth so that Giannis doesn't feel like he has to go out and average 35 points a game in order to win a series, right? I mean, obviously, incredible finals performance, right? Yeah. Take absolutely nothing away from him for that finals performance, but if they wanna be able to repeat or at least try to defend the title, then I think they're gonna need depth.
Exactly. So we'll see. I mean, and then on the Suns side, Chris Paul, you got to feel bad for him. I mean, if anybody deserved a championship, it's him.
I mean, you got to feel a little bad for Chris Paul, right? But for Suns fans, right, that was their first finals appearance ever, right? So sort of a similar taste to almost what the England fans had with the Euros. Like, yeah, maybe you're upset right now or in the next couple weeks because you got to the final or the finals and you just couldn't get it over the line. But realize how much of a significant improvement this is over historical performances, right? Seasons like these can be, defining for the next 10 years for a team, right? The Suns are now going to see the goal of, we can make it to the finals, right? Now I'm going to push to make the playoffs every single year, to be competitive and get through multiple, rounds of the playoffs, right? So it's not necessarily the worst thing for a team that doesn't have a sort of history of
especially a team this young. So we'll see what they can do in the draft. But we've got lots of news. And Nate, as much as we hate to regret it, football rules all in America, and that is not talking soccer. That is talking American football, or as we like to egg handball.
Egg handball. There's only 2 players on the team that kick a ball. The kicker and the punter.
Sometimes it's the same person.
And sometimes it's the same person. But anyways, my opinions on that aside, are we talking about the sort of the regulations that we saw about COVID
Yes,
coming into the league?
and I hope nobody comes after us, but we have our thoughts on this. So the NFL came out yesterday and informed clubs that if a game cannot be rescheduled, and this is coming from a tweet from Tom Pelissero yesterday. He's a reporter for NFL Network and SiriusXM. He says the NFL informed the clubs if a game cannot be rescheduled during the 18-week season this year due to a COVID outbreak among, and this part's crucial, among unvaccinated players, the team will forfeit and be credited with a loss for playoff seeding. There is also more to that. The other thing is the NFL has said they do not anticipate adding a 19th week, quote unquote, to accommodate for games that cannot be rescheduled to play within the regular season. The other thing is every club. Hold on, where is it? Let me see here. Here we go. There's one more tweet about money wise. Here we go. If a game is canceled and cannot be rescheduled with the current 18-game week scheduled during the COVID outbreak, neither team's players will receive their weekly paragraph 5 salary, meaning nobody gets their game checks. And that means for the team that doesn't have any COVID issues and that travel to, let's say, Seattle, whatever it is, or Tampa Bay, and didn't get to play because their opponent has a breakout and can't schedule. So not only does nobody on the team with the COVID outbreak get paid, but the team that they're supposed to play doesn't get paid either. Now they get a win, but for a lot of these guys, especially the guys that aren't stars, they need those game checks. Not all these guys have these endorsement and performance bonuses.
I have several questions.
Go ahead. I'll do my best to answer them with the memo in front of me.
I have several questions about this policy. So the one that really comes to mind, obviously, right, is what happens when a team has a COVID outbreak, right? And I mean, I'm just saying has because I think it's inevitable, especially if you've got
1,000%.
that many guys with a contact sport, right? Regardless of the percentage of people you've got vaccinated, it's going to happen at some point this season, right? So my question is, what's to prevent a team from just not rescheduling a game and just taking the win and just taking the financial hit?
It is not up to the team to reschedule. It's up to the league.
Yeah, but a team can look at the league and say, yeah, sorry, we're not going to be playing 2 games in 6 days.
So everything is restructured out in terms of practice days, when they can't use pads. That's why it was a lot this year. We saw it this year when they tried to really reschedule over and over and over and over again with the Ravens in that Steelers game when the Ravens had that big COVID outbreak. So I really think they said they're done doing that. I think the league as a whole, because it's up to the league to schedule this, because the league has to go through the arenas. It's not necessarily up to the team. The team has to work with the league. If the team is not working with the league, we'll cross that line. I don't see that as an issue.
Well, I mean, that I'm legitimately thinking, like, what if it comes down to, I'm in week 15, 16, and, let's say that I'm a middle of the pack team pushing for a wild card spot and I have to play a division leader. What's to stop me from just not cooperating with the league to reschedule this and just take the win? Because I can just say, oh, well, we couldn't reschedule this game and they had a COVID outbreak, so thanks for the free win. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
I really don't see that happening because it's not up to the. I don't believe it is up to the. The team and the leaders of the team to be, they don't, because the other thing is, remember, the team that doesn't get to play, that is not the COVID issue, they don't get paid.
That's the other thing I have a question about is, like you were saying, not everyone's name is Tom Brady and makes tens of millions of dollars every year and has, multiple endorsements, multiple sponsorships, right? There are guys out there who need this game check, right? So it seems a bit unfair to me, because this just seems sort of like, oh yeah, so 6 people got infected with COVID, so we're gonna punish 150 of you for it. It just doesn't seem. And I think what they're trying to say here is, right, the league doesn't want to pay them if there's a COVID
their game
outbreak.
doesn't happen. So here's what it says. Okay. This is what the NFL language in the memo says. It says, quote, every club is obligated under the Constitution and bylaws to have its team ready to play at the scheduled time and place. A failure to do so is deemed conduct detrimental. There is no right to postpone a game. Meaning that if you cannot be ready to play at the scheduled time,
Sunday at 1,
if you cannot play Sunday at 1 p.m. because of a COVID outbreak, because you have a chance of not having as bad of a COVID outbreak during the season because of the vaccine. Now, there are other things, and we have no way of knowing whether a player is not getting the vaccine because of a medical issue. We have no idea. Obviously, there's players like Cole Beasley and DeAndre Hopkins who have refused it, and we'll get into those in a little bit here. But so I think that kind of goes with both of those points, is what you're saying, is where the team won't just be like, we're not ready to reschedule, because they need to be ready and able to play at that time, whatever their schedule is, and even if it's a reschedule. Now, if it's one person and they push it a day, right, I could still definitely see games on a Monday when there was supposed to be a game on a Sunday, or they push it to Tuesday. But I think once it gets past Tuesdays, I don't think we see games rescheduled, and I think that's when we see the forfeit.
Well, the other issue I'm thinking about is, how is it going to affect these players if I'm having to reschedule, multiple games during the season, and then instead of having, minimum 6 days in between a game, what's going to happen when I've got to play 2 games in 4 days?
Well, see,
right?
I mean, you're never going to have to play 2 games in 4 days. That happened last year. I remember the Dallas Cowboys were supposed to play, I believe, Baltimore. I think it was Baltimore and Pittsburgh had that issue where they pushed it all the way to, I believe, Wednesday. That Thursday was supposed to be, I believe, Pittsburgh versus Dallas. And since Pittsburgh was delayed, they moved that game to Monday, even though it was supposed to be on Thursday. So
I'm just saying, that. So you're saying, like, yeah, we don't want that to happen, right? But
the NFL can't. I don't think it's going to happen, because the NFL, a team will play 2 games in 4 days ever in the NFL. But especially what happened this year, because if they get to a point where that might happen, that's when the forfeit rule will come into effect, I believe. That's what I would assume, because they don't want that exact issue to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
it's a fluid situation, and there's more news. I mean, have you seen? I mean, I believe you and I talked about before about Cole Beasley, and he's playing a wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. He says he doesn't want to get vaccinated. He says he wants to take his chances with the antibodies. He doesn't want to put anything he doesn't know in his body, which is a ridiculous thing. But DeAndre Hopkins, who plays for the Arizona Cardinals, is a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, maybe the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And he tweeted out yesterday when this memo came out, and he said, quote, "Never thought I would say this, but being in a position to hurt my team because I don't want to partake in the vaccine is making me question my future in the NFL." Now, he deleted that because he would have owed the Cardinals $23 million. But he said, don't worry, at the end of the day, he said, don't worry, y'all, I got like 13 years left in me or something like that, or I've got plenty more seasons. He would owe the Cardinals a $22 million unearned signing bonus money. So
the thing that I have to say for players who don't have a valid medical reason for refusing this, right, is, unfortunately, in sometimes, right, you are employed by a business, and that business is free to create conditions of employment, especially in states that are right to work states, right? So if your employer says, hey, for the safety of yourself and everyone around you, I'm requiring this. If you want to say no to that, again, that's your choice, but that doesn't mean that, a team has to continue to keep you, which, sounds mean to the players. But if you're in a position where you're talented enough to be an NFL player, which very few people get the opportunity to, very, very few. The percentages are microscopic of the people who get to this level, right?
Yep.
And if you really, really, really want to put that at risk, all for a poke on your arm, then I don't know what to tell you.
So the other thing is DeAndre Hopkins, when he went on Twitter, this tweet was he after that tweet was deleted, he went on and he said freedom ? So that's just not correct. And now there's other things where if it goes further, there's things like, well, if we can say this because you don't have a vaccine, this happens. We can't let it go further than this. There can be bigger issues of just restricting things because you don't have something done that is good. Because the end of the day, you should get the vaccine. They've proven to be safe and effective, but it is a choice. We can't. It is not something that's mandatory. Now the NFL is saying it is meant. You don't have to get it, but if you don't have it, here's the issue.
Do they have a similar rule, like where in the MLB you have to have an X percentage of like
So
people
in
on your
the MLB,
team?
it was if your team is 85% vaccinated or more, staying at the herd immunity line, you get different, like you'll have less restrictions on you. Same
Hmm.
thing goes to the NFL. If you are
Okay.
vaccinated, it says here in the memo, it says vaccinated individuals who test positive and are asymptomatic, so they must be asymptomatic, can return to duty after 2 negative tests that are 24 hours apart.
Okay.
Unvaccinated individuals are still subject to a mandatory 10-day isolation period.
Oh,
So, and then the
jeez.
other thing is, and that came up for the years, is that there was COVID restrictions and rules in terms of players wanting to come out and being able to do things outside of football if they're vaccinated or not. Now, if you go to certain things like, let's say, out to dinner indoors, and you're unvaccinated, I believe it's a $50,000 penalty, which I think is a little much because a lot of people are doing that. Now there's a matter of being safe and not. What if you buy out the place and you do it indoors and everybody else is vaccinated except for you? There's a lot of things that need to go in that. I don't have that exact wording in front of me, and that's going to take some digging, so we can go over that another time. But there are COVID rules for people and teams that are vaccinated. And Nate, I don't know. I'll go a step further here. Minnesota Vikings offensive line coach and run game coordinator Rick Denson got fired yesterday for refusing to take the COVID-19 vaccine.
I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, right?
The NFL,
Uh,
here, let me say this, continue. I'm sorry. The NFL mandates that all tier one staff get vaccinated. For all tier one staff that are not vaccinated, they must go through proof of medical or religious reasons to not get the vaccine. The tier one staff are those that are in constant contact with the players, and it just got added in that also the Pats co-offensive line coach Kolpovich won't be with the New England Patriots this year because of the COVID-19 vaccine and the NFL guidelines. So it's having more of an effect also on the coaches, not even just the players.
Again, it's kind of hitting on what I said earlier, right? You know, these businesses, right, in order to keep their employees and sort of their livelihood for the business at least secure, right, are being allowed to create certain requirements for employment. And if you don't want to take that, then it kind of seems like the teams are just sort of saying, like, again, we'd really like to retain you, but if you're going to insist on this being the hill you're going to die on, then see ya,
Sorry, yeah,
right?
like the NFL wants people vaccinated. I mean, if you look at, I believe it was the either SEC or ACC college football organization said the best chance for us to play is for everybody to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
And the Delta variant is clearly, it's ripping through people. There's no controlling it. And yeah, I do think that the COVID-19 vaccine needs to be more publicized as something that will more of just, you won't let you get it. Like, yeah, you have a good chance of not getting it. But I think it needs to be outward and explained more that if you do get COVID for some reason, the vaccine, you're not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people fail to understand that because people keep saying, oh, they're still getting COVID with the vaccine. Then why get it if I'm still going to get it? Because you won't die, and people just don't understand that. And don't get me wrong. This could turn into a bigger issue of restricting things more than just a vaccine, right? School, it's weird.
Well,
it's
and I
interesting.
mean,
It's yeah. Go ahead.
we've discussed this a couple times, in the last couple weeks, but like personally, I want fans
So do I.
back in stadiums, right? The players want fans back in stadiums. And most of all, the fans want to be back in the stadiums, right? But the last thing that we want is for fans to be let back into the stadiums when the situation regarding, large groups of people together aren't safe, because the last thing that you want is to take a family outing to a football game or a basketball game or a hockey game, whatever sport you want to watch, right? And then have family members, get sick with COVID or, have a loss in the family from it. I mean, it's the last thing anyone wants, but but if yeah, it's a tough one to answer, because I think everyone is on the same page of wanting fans back,
Even players.
right? Even the players, no, especially the players,
Yeah.
right?
Makes the game intense, makes the game fun, and it
But
pushes.
but the simple question is, if we can't make it safe for the fans,
It's not safe for the players.
it's just immoral to let people back in.
It's not just immoral. It's just not safe.
Mm-hmm.
So and here's what I'll say. The last thing here, the NFL also said in the memo, it said, "quote If a club cannot play due to a COVID spike in vaccinated individuals, we will attempt to minimize the competitive and economic burden on both participating teams." So if your team like that, which is the other end of the spectrum, right? If there's a vaccine, and my other question is, what is considered a outbreak, and then how are they going to determine that it started from an unvaccinated person? Those are two things that I don't know how they're going to do. Contact tracing, what it is, and contact tracing has gotten better and better as we've learned more and more about this. But give me your last thoughts on this. I think it's a good thing, but it can't go any further than this, because if it goes further than vaccines, it goes to more things. It'll be more moral issues rather than just a vaccine.
So the NFL has to toe a difficult line here.
Very difficult
with all of the teams, right? They want the league and the players and the coaches and the staff and the training staff and the fans to all play and enjoy the sport they love. But they need to balance that with, how do I do this safely and in a way where, everyone can still enjoy the sport, but we're not risking people's lives, right?
And that goes for players, fans, coaches, everybody involved. And like, I mean, even then, if you look at the college ranks, like I said before, conferences are telling their players and schools that the best chance for us to play is for everybody to get vaccinated. This is not meant to be a vaccine political show. Like, we want to focus this on sports. So, let's move forward here. We've given our thoughts, and if anybody has any more thoughts, we see more info, things come in the NFL, we'll let you know. And we just don't want these players sitting on the bench getting sick. And speaking of the bench, use Bench 2 on Peak Clothes. That's peakclothes.com. Nate, did you like that transition? That was pretty smooth.
That was pretty clean.
So peakclothes.com, bench number 2, $5 off. You save trees with their stuff. They're putting out new stuff every day. It's going to be awesome. They're from a bunch of guys from Colorado. Love working with them. They're really good. But Nate, we get to go back to my sport now. I don't know if you listened Wednesday, but I did a whole special on the expansion draft. And there were a couple question marks. Now, they've already made a trade. They traded Tyler Pitlick to Calgary. And then obviously we just found out about the Pavel Buchnevich from the Rangers to the Blues. Now, I sent you their roster, and then I made you look at the size of the D-men. Let's say the Kraken here are a very big team, and Ron Francis is known for having a goalie and building out from the goalie, so having defensemen. Now, give me your thoughts. I don't think they're going to be nearly as good as Vegas. They have offensive struggles. They have the big rig and Jamie Alexiak. They've got good goaltending, and I don't know if you saw this, but from ASU, remember the goalie Joey Dockord? He's on the Kraken. He was chosen from Ottawa.
I did see that. So, just a couple thoughts, right, on the way they're building a team, right? There's several different ways that you can go out and build a sports team, right? Building from the back is a very standardized and accepted way to build a core, right? And of course in hockey, right, that key player is the goaltender, because Max, would you say that that's an important position?
Defense?
No, goaltender.
Slightly, only a little bit.
Right. And if there's a clear strategy here of, I'm going to have very big defensemen. The smallest defenseman on the team is 6 feet tall. The lightest defenseman on the team, 195 pounds.
And which one is it? That's
So it's oh gosh, I'm gonna butcher names here. Gavin Bayreuther, 195 pounds, and then Vince Dunn, 6 feet tall.
They're good players. Bayreuther, I don't think it's going to be in the NHL. Vince Dunn might be a trade piece. I do see Kel Fleury and Hayden Fleury, the brothers, playing together. And I keep seeing this joke online. Look, Vegas started with one Fleury and made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Seattle's got 2. Did they win the finals? The biggest name players, obviously Mark Giordano. This team's gonna be offensively struggled. And if you remember, they've got Adam Larson, which was the Adam Larson for Taylor Hall trade. He's turned into a solid defenseman. The other one I don't understand is Jared McCann. He was great for Pittsburgh. He was in Florida. He was great in Pittsburgh. Toronto made a trade for him, gave a prospect and a late round pick. And he's the kind of guy that Toronto, I would think, want. That's like Zach Hyman, who's going to go to Edmonton soon once it gets official. that work hard player with some offense skill, can play as a perfect second line forward. He's a great complement to the Matthews, the Marner. And they left him unprotected, and it's not like he was a free agent, right? So there's situations like Chris Drieger or in this team, in this case, Jamie Alexiak, the defenseman. They were unrestricted free agents. And so Seattle picked them and was able to talk to them early to make sure that they would sign in order to pick them. But somebody like Ovechkin, who's an unrestricted free agent right now, we know he's going to sign in Washington. Now, Washington did not use a protection on him because they knew he wouldn't sign with Seattle. So it was interesting to see why they left him exposed with a year of control left for that kind of player.
Mm-hmm. It's there were definitely some interesting protection groups across the league. But I think, and the one thing we were discussing before this is the Seattle Kraken left themselves a lot of cap space.
They wanted to make sure they could get cap space to not only take on contracts, which allows them to take picks, because Arizona is taking on contracts. Arizona doesn't have a first-round pick this year. They forfeited it. They have 7 second-round picks combined for this year and next year.
Yeah,
they want to be the Oakland City. So they have, right now, the Kraken have $30 million in cap space, and they still have a chance at Dougie Hamilton, who's a free agent, top defenseman. Gabriel Landeskog's a free agent, among others. I mean, and it allows them to take on bigger contracts, whether they want to trade or add or sign people long-term. I don't think this team makes the playoffs. I think they're a bubble team.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see because free agency starts next Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that'll be a topic of discussion next week. I'll have to keep up to date on all the trades that get made, right?
Yep. And we'll see if there's anything tonight. Remember, tonight's round 1 of the entry draft. So, and Seattle picks second.
Yeah.
So, that's a trade. I don't think they're going to trade number 2. We'll see who they're going to take. But I do want to get into one more trade here with you. The roster freeze was lifted after the expansion draft, and Alex Nedeljkovic is a goaltender for the the Carolina Hurricanes, or as ESPN likes to say, the Carolina Panthers. I hope you saw all of that on Twitter. The Panthers had somebody the Hurricanes. See, I'm mixing myself up here. The Hurricanes had somebody draw basically the outline of the Panthers logo with a cat face on like a paper and pencil, and then posted it as their profile pic. The Hurricanes did. Then the Panthers just took the Hurricanes logo and made it blue and black and put it as their profile picture. And they were just having a blast.
And then they made it into a shirt and it sold out in an hour.
Did they really? I didn't know that much.
Yeah, the Carolina Panthers made it into a shirt and put it on their merchandise store, and it sold out in an hour.
That's
and
awesome.
It's of that derpy like pencil drawing.
That pencil like
logo.
Panther cat. The Hurricanes did that, right?
Yeah.
That cracks me up. So they were great. So anyway, so the Hurricanes, they had a breakout goalie who was second in Rookie of the Year voting this year and was the starter in the playoffs until they hit Tampa when he started losing a couple games, and they went with Peter Mrazek. They traded Alex Nedeljkovic for a third-round pick and the rights to a upcoming free agent goalie, and then the Red Wings signed Nedeljkovic to a 2-year, $3 million deal. And Steve Yzerman, who was one of the main pieces who built Tampa Bay for them to be that Stanley Cup champion that they are. Now, Breezebaugh did a lot of the dirty work getting the depth, and he's their GM now, but Yzerman's back with the Red Wings, and he's the GM instead of a player. When he was asked about this trade, Yzerman said, quote, "You're going to have to ask them why they were comfortable doing that." If that's not saying, I don't know why they accepted this deal. This was supposed to be an initial offer, and it just worked. I'm playing fantasy hockey. Thanks for my goalie of the future. I don't know what is, because that cracks me the hell up.
It's either one of two things. Either there was a screw up in accepting this trade.
I doubt
on one side.
It really can't happen.
Or the other thing is just when they made this initial offer, the timing, the offer, and the player just were all like aligned on for some reason, and it just went through.
But that's the thing, Carolina, right? They've struggled with goalie. Mrazek's been injured, but he's been good. Nedeljkovic had finally broke out this past year. They had James Reimer, but they've been looking for the guy that they've needed in net. That's what Carolina's missing. And why was this like? You have cap space. If you don't they didn't want to pay him 2 years, $3 million a piece, and after 2 to 3 years, the cap might go up. So if he continues this trend, you can pay him. Especially since you might lose Dougie Hamilton, right? Even if they were to re-sign Dougie Hamilton to an 8-year, $7 million contract per year every year, it might be 8. 2 years at $3 million. Barclay Goodrow, a fourth-line player, is making more than that for the New York Rangers, and he got a 6-year deal.
Okay, but the Rangers have a lot of money.
They
Lot
have a
of
lot of
money.
money, but they have cap space. So money is one thing, but cap space is another. Don Waddell and the Carolina Hurricanes, I almost said Panthers. Look at that. They're screwing me up. The Carolina Hurricanes have done a good job since they've got the new ownership of making sure their players are paid. And I don't know if they really just had their eyes set on Frederick Anderson, the former Toronto Maple Leafs goalie, who's now a free agent, if they want to sign him. If they're
It
going to
is
bring
possible that they had him like I said, it's possible that they just had someone pegged as a target and were okay with letting this goalkeeper go. It may have just been a very lucky alignment of everything works, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I'm excited for the Red Wings. They're getting better. They have their picks. I mean, it's Yzerman. They have a good team. They're building something bigger. I think they got their guy in net now. They've got
Yeah.
somebody to build around. Their defense is starting to come along. Dylan Larkin's there. Obviously, they got Jake Verona. I mean, there was a fleece last year. They traded Anthony Mantha and a pick for Verona, who's younger, making less money, who's arguably going to be a better offensive player for them, less defensive. But I'm excited. The entry draft is tonight. Could we see Jack Eichel get moved? If he does, to who? I almost am certain it's the Rangers, especially with now, like we said in the beginning of the show, the Rangers moving on for Buchnevich. I think it was just a piece they couldn't afford. It creates more cap space available now for Jack Eichel to come in along with other players. They got to re-sign other people they bought out. General and lovely locker room guy, Tony D'Angelo, the guy who pushed his own goalie after letting in an overtime winner and then got cash-drized from the Rangers. He's not a good locker room guy. The Rangers bought him out. So it'll be interesting, but let's get on to here to arguably the most overrated sporting events in the world in the Olympics. And I said this Wednesday. Actually, I said this Tuesday. I said this Tuesday with Derek. The ratings for this year's Olympics, especially summer, are going to be absolute trash, and they already are. And there's been protests outside of the stadiums during the opening ceremonies. And COVID outbreaks are going up and up. It's not good to see that the Tokyo Olympics website have its very own COVID positivity list in a PDF form. They don't give names, but they give what type it is. So if it's an athlete, media, coach, whatever it is, and the total number of COVID positives and contact traces they've had. I know you have strong opinions on this, Nathan. Give me what you got.
Yeah, I've got some feelings and opinions about the Olympics.
All you. Floor is yours.
So, again, like I say with the NFL policy, I have several questions, right? I mean, first of all, right, almost every single major tournament, right, has gotten delayed in some form, right? And so have the Olympics, right? And initially people were saying, oh, well, Japan, geographically wise, may actually be a very good spot to potentially have the Olympics because you're on an island, so you can isolate who exactly comes in, right? So, you don't have a similar risk of the Euros where you just have people from all different countries and cities and areas piling in, right? But then, you have to question sort of the why, as in, why are we forcing this to happen? Right? Why? I mean, and you say the Olympics are overrated. I personally enjoy them, right? Because, I ran track and field and I ran cross country when I was in high school, right? Which are less traditional, sort of media picked up on sports, but I think they're fun.
They're fun, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want to, diminish them, and it means a lot for these players to wear their countries, nations, and colors. Mm-hmm. From a fan perspective, without fans there, and especially for people in America, a lot of these events are going to take place in the middle of the night, so it's all replays. I know me, I like to watch live sports. I don't like having to record things or going back to watch things. If that's the case, I might as well just watch highlights unless it's a team I really care about. Without fans, I think it's going to be tough, and I think in the Summer Olympics, I think there's a lot more judged competitions rather than objective competitions. Right, you've got the track and field, which I think are exciting, but I mean, how big is that in places like America? I mean, it's big for the people in that niche, but I digress. And I hate to interrupt you. We have another blockbuster trade in the NHL really quick.
Oh, geez, what happened?
The Arizona Coyotes have just traded Oliver Ekman-Larsson, their number one defenseman for a very long time and captain, and then top offensive forward Connor Garland to Vancouver.
For who?
For Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, Anton Roussel, and the 9th overall pick. Now, Louis Eriksson is arguably one of the worst contracts in the history of the NHL, and then they got two pieces in Beagle and Roussel who are not good in the 9th overall pick. that gave Vancouver lots of cap space, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a very good defenseman. He needs to work his defense. Connor Garland is a terrific player. And I don't understand what Arizona's doing. They're, again, just taking on more bad contracts. But back to the Olympics. Go right ahead.
I'll just make the statement of Max. Has anyone understood what the Arizona Coyotes have done with any trade
they've
ever?
taken on bad contract after bad contract. If they are not the worst in the league, they're taking for Shane Wright, who's supposed to be the number 1 pick overall next year.
So, but again, right, we kind of have to question, right? I mean, when you have an opening ceremony for the Olympics, right, normally it's supposed to be this joyous, momentous occasion of the gathering of countries and the best athletes in the world at what they do, right? You know, look back to like the Beijing Olympics in 2008, right? You remember those opening ceremonies, right? Those were amazing, right? This one felt almost hollow for a couple reasons. One, there's no fans.
None.
In the stadium.
The hype.
Right? There's no fans, no
not
cheering
even family
people,
members.
Right? And the biggest thing was, but you know what we could hear? We could hear the ongoing protests from people gathered outside the stadium who were protesting the Olympics going on. I mean, there's a shockingly large, not actually shockingly, I think it's just a very large percentage of people living in Japan and in the areas where the Olympics are occurring who just don't want it happening. Because like we had said, you know, you're bringing in international people, and, you know, I'm really hoping that everyone is vaccinated around, but the Olympic Village and where people live and all that is a densely populated area. And I mean, Japan is a very densely populated country.
I mean, you heard the rumors, right? It was, they have cardboard beds to prevent people from hanging out in each other's rooms and having, what is it? I don't know, intense contact, if you're catching my drift.
You know, maybe some recreational activities.
Yeah, let's go with that. Recreational activities. And hopefully they don't make any bunk beds for room for activities.
Now, of course, I have to say that rumor was disproven. They were just using reusable materials. Yep. I think they were like, yeah, these beds can hold like 450 pounds or something. So, I mean, but yeah, so, I mean, just the Olympics are always a tough one because it's very rare that the people who host the Olympics come out better for it. Right. And we've seen that pattern over the last 20 years, which is saddening, right? Because I think the Olympics should be a fantastic event that everybody enjoys, right? And we get some, you know, good international cooperation and fun out of it, right? But it's hard when you have something shadowing over an event like this, because it takes a really big event to shadow over the Olympics, right? But this just worries me more than anything, right? Because, you know, what's to say if Japan, right, starts to get a high positivity rate of athletes or staff?
We're already heading in that direction. There's more
or media. We're already heading around that, right? And the city probably can't shut it down, because then that would be a really big issue.
And the Olympics are always meant for the cities and the people in the surrounding areas of the arenas to do good. They're losing out on billions of dollars and billions of money for not only just the stadium, but the country, the small businesses in the area, the hotels, everything are just, they don't get any of that money now. So the Olympics is not only great for the players, people who wear their countries, but with a situation like this, not only does it feel forced, it's not going to get the TV ratings that it wants, so it's not going to do as well as it is. I believe the intensity of some of these team games are going to be good. I mean, we saw Team USA lose 3-0 to Sweden. You said it was over 40 games since they had lost, right? Women's soccer.
I think that the U.S. women's soccer lost for several reasons.
But don't get me wrong, intensity of games can be issues. Getting up for the game, you know, we saw that in Premier League this year, right? There was no fans. It was almost like the home field advantage went away, right? So I'm not saying that there's going to be home field advantage in the Olympics, but the intensity of game, getting up for the game, being like, well, I'm just going to go out and play soccer today. You know, nobody's watching us anyway, especially for people in America, right? The game's at, 2 a.m. Pacific time? Who's awake watching that live?
I
Nobody's
think
watching us
it's going to
anyway.
be, I think maybe one way to assess really how the athletes are feeling about this, right? And, this may be skewed possibly by like who's at the games, right? Like, do we have any really big generational talents in certain events? But I think one thing that'll be interesting to do is to sort of measure like average performance of athletes in events in comparison to the last two or three, right? Because normally what you see in the Olympics is athletes only get faster, better, stronger, right? Our sports medicine programs are able to improve our athletes' performance by, 0.7%. But in the Olympics, that's enough for an Olympic record or a world record, right? So, maybe an interesting thing to look at over the next couple of weeks is how are these athletes performing, right? And if they're not performing as well as they would normally do, right, then maybe there's some more questions to be asked of was this smart for the athletes even, right? Because I think the athletes were definitely, in some of the biggest parties who were really pushing for the events to still go through. And you can't blame them for that. They put years and years of their lives into training for these events, right? And it would be awful if they were just canceled, the events. But again, right, what we have to ask, is it safe for the area around them? Is it safe for the cities? Is it good for the country that's hosting it, right? I mean, that's my biggest worry almost, is that like you were saying, like if things really start going in a bad direction, whether that be in the surrounding area of the Olympic Village and where the athletes are, or with the athletes themselves, right? Are we going to see the country of Japan potentially step in and say, you know what, I'm sorry, we thought this was going to work, but
Yep.
we're done. The doors are locked. I'm sorry. Right.
And then what's gonna happen with the players who need to go home from different nations? And what if they have COVID? Are they allowed out?
Yeah. And then that's the really big question is if that occurs, what next?
What's next for the people that are there that have traveled in that aren't Japanese? And what's there the people that traveled in that got COVID? There's a lot of moving situations, and I if there's any last thoughts on the Olympics, it feels forced. You thought the Euros were forced. I would agree with you. We didn't hear as much COVID issues through them. We only heard a couple, and it really wasn't all that much. There was no outbreaks between teams. There was no real players missing because of COVID. No, I think the Olympics is a much bigger stage and a lot more people coming in. So it's a little tough to kind of compare the two. Obviously, there's more travel with the Euros, but with everybody in here, I think it's more chance of the Olympics to have a spread because everybody's, like you said, they're living in Olympic Village. They're all in close quarters. And you look at, you just look at certain events. You got basketball, right? We've seen what can happen there in the season. We don't know what the other vaccines are for the other nations, things like that. You could look at indoor cycling if they're even doing that this year. They're heavy breathing on each other, things like that. Swimming is in a water, but they're standing there, they're backstroking, the high-fiving to switch, the people waiting on the relays to go when it's four-person relay, they're standing next to each other. There's just so many indication of what can and can't happen, and we don't know how well it's going to be handled. It's not being handled well already, and in that close quarters, all it takes is a few unvaccinated people to start a massive spread, and that goes for everyone.
There's that sort of classic quote in sports of trust your gut, right? When you're playing sports,
right?
Like if your gut is telling you this is the correct move, right? If you're good at the sport you play, 99% of the time, that's the right thing to do, right? And I look at the Olympics and my gut tells me, I don't know if this should be happening, right? Which, I don't think I can remember the last time the Olympics were canceled. Was it World War II? I think.
I honestly don't know.
I think it would have to be if that's the only thing I can think of that would potentially cancel them. But I really do question and it makes me sad. It makes me sad and upset to say I'm questioning the Olympics happening, right?
It's something that is so casual, and although it's something that is not the biggest thing in the world, but it is still big in other nations, right? And these players, especially, even the ones that play, like in the NBA or whatever it is, right? You look at the NHL. The NHL doesn't know if they're even going to play in the Olympics this year, yet they scheduled out a break as if they're going to go. So for these athletes and coaches and these people, it's such a big deal for them to go. And although for people, spectators watching, it might not be as good or great competition that we could be watching, and maybe you wanted to see your favorite team instead of the nation. I mean, it brings people together around the world. I mean, the fact that even North Korea even participates in this stuff says something. I mean, they want everybody there that can qualify to be there. Obviously, it's an athletic sport. You need to be qualified to go. You can't just send random people. Could you imagine you and me going and playing soccer? That'd be pretty funny.
I actually saw one funny thing that I think would actually be a little entertaining, but it'll never happen. They said that for every single event of the Olympics, you should have an average person from a random country participate in that event at the same time as the Olympians to show you how like big the gap is in comparison. And I thought, oh, come on, man, that would just be humiliating. Like, can you imagine an average person trying to run like a 100-meter dash against like Usain Bolt or something like that?
Yeah, that would be pretty funny.
So that gave me a good laugh, but it's not something that I think will ever happen.
So it is what it is. I know you've got to run. You've got some stuff to do. You've got a new roommate coming in. They're coming this weekend, so you got to prepare. So we're going to end here a couple minutes early. But Nate, give me your lasting thoughts. What do you think is going to happen in the NHL, the draft tonight? Do you see Jack Eichel getting moved? Give me any lasting thoughts on what you see. We know our Arsenal. We're both wearing Arsenal today. I've got the kid on from, I believe, was this 15, 16 year we graduated? Because I got this when we were there. And you've got a shirt
thoughts. Last thoughts. I don't know. Olympics. It's a big question mark for me, right? The NHL draft, ESPN, please present it better than you did the expansion draft, or I will just be a sad boy.
ESPN 2. I hope we hear the theme song. We heard it for the first time yesterday. We released the schedule. January 13th, our Rangers here in San Jose. Excited.
That's my final thought. NHL, please fix your presentation, or I will be very sad.
We'll get to see TNT. The Kraken are playing Vegas opening night on ESPN. The Rangers and the Capitals. Maybe they'll fight on TNT to give them their first game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you all for listening. I know we're ending a couple minutes early here, but Nate's got to go. And I have a tea time. So we've got to run here. I've got to go get a tea time. I still pushing it good. We'll be all right. We're going to have a lot of fun here. Nate, thanks for joining me. This has always been a great time. Check out the YouTube. It's not that it matters with Max Miller. I'm behind on uploads. I'm getting that done tonight and tomorrow. I don't yell at me, Nathan. I'm the last episode I don't have up is our episode from last week. So four episodes behind. They'll get up tonight and tomorrow. I promise you. Thank you all for listening. Keep checking out the Bench Sports. We've got Ryan Lip after us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And Pete Close, who's Bench 2. Appreciate it. And everybody have a good day. And I hope I shoot a birdie today.